in order for you to try something new, you have to provide time for yourself. Hard to be curious when you don't have time. Hard to become a beginner again when you don't have time. So that's another one.
The last one's huge. So anticipated regret. So you look in the future and say, I'm going to regret doing this. And that could be with bad habits too.
I'm going to regret not doing
it. Then both. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Thank you for that. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. Today I have a very, very special guest, Chip Conley, a visionary leader who has transformed the hospitality industry not once, but twice. Very, very rare. From founding a very difficult to pronounce, but beautiful name, Joie de Vivre, hospitality, to redefining the guest experience at the beloved Airbnb. Chip's journey is a testament to power of innovative thinking and strategic mentorship. Now he's doing the Modern Elder Academy, which I've heard tremendous things about and been invited to several times. Unfortunately, I've not been able to come out. Chip is shaping how we think about midlife. He's got an incredible book I just read that we're going to get into. Chip, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your time.
I'm honored to be here.
Thank you, brother.
Let's dive in.
Let's do it. So let's start with the journey. Like, obviously, you didn't wake up one morning and say, "Hey, I want to start the Elder Academy and I'm going to change the way that people think about midlife." Tell me a little bit about how you got to this point and your journey up.
So I grew up in Southern California, went up to college at Stanford and was fascinated by real estate. I went straight into Stanford Business School and went to work for a commercial real estate developer out of business school at age 23. And 2 years later, I decided to start a boutique hotel company. This was the mid-1980s when boutique hotels were just getting off the ground as a concept in the United States. And I bought a pay-by-the-hour motel in the Tenderloin of San Francisco. And pay-by-the-hour hotel does over 100% occupancy daily because they charge by the hour. But it was in bad shape. It was in bankruptcy. And so long story short is I turned it into a place called the Phoenix, a rock and roll hotel. And that was the first of 52 boutique hotels that we created in my company. And I ran that company for 24 years. In my late 40s, after I'd been running it for over 20 years, and I'd written at that point 3 books, I realized I didn't want to do it anymore. And so I was starting to think about what was next for me. And that's when the Great Recession came along and didn't give me much of a choice. I had to be running that company. Otherwise, it was going to go out of business.
2008, Chip?
This 2008 to 2010, exactly. And so everything that could go wrong did go wrong during that time. It was my late 40s. I was having, what I would have called back then a midlife crisis. I would now call it a midlife chrysalis.
Oh.
The chrysalis is the in-between stage between caterpillar and butterfly. And it's dark and gooey and solitary, but it's also where the transformation happens. And that's really what I felt, is I felt a real deep sense that I was supposed to transform. I ended up having an NDE, a near-death experience. I died, had an allergic reaction to an antibiotic. And that's what I said, I'm going to sell this company and I have no idea what I'm going to do next. And I'm going to end my relationship. And I lost 5 male friends to suicide during that time as well.
Oh my God, that's terrible.
3 of them entrepreneurs. And so it rocked me to my core. And at age 50, I was like, okay, next, what's up? And so I'd sold Joie de Vivre. It's a Hyatt brand. And I spent 2 years just sort of reflecting on what was important to me. And I was a founding board member of Burning Man. And so I went around the world to 36 festivals in 16 countries in 1 year, fascinated by all kinds of different reasons. Like, why are these festivals, the more digital we get, the more ritual we seem to need. And so long story short is, at age 52, after I'd also written a book called Emotional Equations, which became a New York Times bestseller, I got a call from Brian Chesky, and he's the founder and co-founder and CEO of Airbnb. And he said, Chip, how would you like to help us democratize hospitality? And Airbnb was existing, but it was a small tech startup that was growing very quickly globally. And but they had nobody in the company who knew anything about hospitality or travel or the industry at all. So I spent 7.5 years, 4 years full-time, 3.5 years part-time as the modern elder to the founders there. They said, Chip, you're a modern elder because you're as curious as you are wise. And I said, okay, well, you can make fun of my age because I was twice the age of the average person. But I said, yeah, I like that idea of being both the alchemy of curiosity and wisdom. And that's really how I ended up writing a book called Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder. And while I was writing that book down here in Baja in Mexico on the beach, an hour north of Cabo San Lucas, I had a Baja aha when I was running on the beach one day. I had an epiphany about the idea that we need midlife wisdom schools. We need a place for people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s to sort of reimagine and repurpose themselves. And that's how MEA came about. And so I've had really 3 chapters in my career life. First, as a CEO of one of the first boutique hotel companies in the US and the second largest one. Second, as the person helping to steer the rocket ship as the gray hair at Airbnb. And then thirdly, as a founder and CEO of the world's first midlife wisdom school. So yeah, it's been, I've loved it. And here at MEA, we have a campus in Baja, and now we've just opened a campus in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Chip, what's the relation to Inc. and Inc. Masters? Because I've met you, I think, at the event in Austin. I've been invited to your awesome academies. It's just timing is always tough. Like, where's the relationship between the two?
So Inc. for 3 years now has been doing their Masters event. So for those who don't know what Inc. Masters is, it's like their peer-to-peer network where people can go deeper, entrepreneurs go deeper with each other. So they started coming to MEA post-COVID. So for 3 years now, we've done a week-long workshop with about maybe 20 to 24 entrepreneurs here in our Baja location. What we're now doing also is a public workshop called Entrepreneurship at Any Age at our Santa Fe location. And that's in September. And I'm an Inc. columnist as well. So I have a column in Inc. And so yeah, a lot of relationships with Inc. and a lot of relationships with entrepreneurs. I feel at age 63, I'm in a stage of my life where I want to give back. I really want to help be that, advisor, mentor, support to younger entrepreneurs, partly because, when I lost 5 friends to suicide, all men, and 3 of them were entrepreneurs, I could feel that the entrepreneurs weren't talking about how devastated they were about the state of their company because of the Great Recession.
Well, it becomes part of who you are, right? I mean, I've had friends that have exited their businesses, they accomplished their dreams, and it was like, I've done it. They sold their businesses for a lot of money, and they said literally 2 days later, after the celebration was over, they looked up, it was like, now what? What do I do, right? Yeah. What's left for me? So they lose their purpose. Yeah. Now, at least that's a happy exit. Some of these folks that had to just, they had to fold their businesses, I'm sure, in 8 and 9, that is a very, very difficult situation. They laid off probably hundreds of people, and that must have been very difficult. Is that part of why you did the Modern Elder Academy?
Yeah, part of the reason I did it was because I had personally a very bad last half of my 40s, and then I loved my 50s. And so I was like, that's interesting. Midlife maybe gets better after you get through that rough patch. And then I also have my friends who took their lives. But I also, in my 50s, while I was at Airbnb, I saw all kinds of people who were around my age or younger doing everything they could to hide their age in a tech firm, whether it's Botox or coloring their hair or literally actually lying about their age. And I thought, my God, we got to figure this out. We need to figure out, how do we create more intergenerational collaboration? How do we help people feel better about their age? And so the program, the MEA program, has 3 key pieces to it: navigating transitions, cultivating purpose, and owning wisdom. Those are the 3 core curriculum workshops we did.
What transformations have you witnessed in the attendees? Like, what's one particular story, impactful story that you can think of?
Well, I'll give you maybe even two stories. One from ink, one from not. A non-ink story is a woman who came here last year, and she was really sad because she'd been a litigation attorney for 35 years, and she was 60 years old, and she just didn't want to do it anymore. But she knew that she still wanted to work, but she didn't like the pond she was swimming in litigation. Litigation, I mean, everybody's arguing and negotiating, and you're having to be a hard ass. And so she thought that she needed to become a litigation consultant, which is sort of like still in the same pond. And she came here, and we took her through a process in our Cultivating Purpose workshop by which she realized that there were some things earlier in her life that she was passionate about, but she had neglected. One of them was each night she'd have a dream about her grandmother. And then she started to make sense of that. And she realized that when she was a teenager, she would go over to her grandma's house and they'd cook pies together. And she loved doing that. And so as an adult, as a litigation attorney, she cooks pies for her friends. She actually has friends over for dinner, and she says everybody has to stay for dessert. But she also noticed that when she goes on vacation, the first thing she looked at on a digital map was the closest bakery. Not because she wanted to eat a lot of baked goods, but she just was interested to see what they had. And so by the end of the week, she realized, okay, I'm going to go to pastry chef school. And she did. And she loved that for 3 months. And then she decided, I'm going to quit being a litigation attorney, and I'm going to actually be an entrepreneur. I'm going to open a bakery in my neighborhood, because the bakery that used to be here closed down during COVID. And that's what I'm going to do. So sometimes people have a big leap in terms of what they realize they need to do. Another story, someone from Inc. program, he sold his company and he just wasn't sure what was next. And I think what he really realized was he had spent most of his life not giving his kids or his wife much attention. So he got really committed to that. But then he also got really committed to becoming a professional mentor and a coach.
Wow.
And he realized, like, he is in his 50s. He could go out and be an entrepreneur again. But he also realizes he doesn't want to go and do that. And he's got kids in their teens. Yeah. He wants to spend time with them before they, leave the home. And he realized that even though he was a software engineer and he didn't think he had much in the capacity or capability of being a coach, it's a little too soft for him. Realized that he was always intrigued by other people's stories. And so he trained to become a coach, and now is a coach for entrepreneurs. And,
that's awesome.
And if you read the book From Strength to Strength, Arthur Brooks' famous book that, he mentions MEA in the book, he basically says, listen, as we get older, we need to learn that we have our fluid intelligence, which is our fast and focused brain, moves to the crystallized intelligence, where we think more synthetically, more holistically, we connect the dots. And that means that being a coach is a great career for someone at that stage in their life.
Interesting. Yeah, a lot of wisdom gathered up until that point, because we, folks that are entrepreneurs, man, sure, we live the same 20 years from 20 to 40, but it's so thick. It's so consolidated. It's more like 50 years or 60 years. So that you learn a ton, you fail a ton. So that's huge. My audience has to know. Tell us a little bit of lessons from Airbnb, because you're talking much deeper stuff, but I want to jump into Airbnb's successes, failures. What can we learn from what they did? Because they've been a huge success, obviously.
Yeah, when I joined Airbnb, most people had never heard of it, and but it had a very good following amongst millennials, and so that's what I really wanted to understand. So when I joined, I did a bunch of time. I spent a lot of time interviewing, some of our core customers, both hosts and guests. And what I realized is there were really two key reasons why people used Airbnb. Number one is they wanted more space for less money. And what I mean by that is, you get an apartment and you're paying less than for a room in a hotel. And so that was sort of like core to why people used Airbnb originally, because they could get more space, less money. And the average length of stay for an Airbnb guest was more than double what it was for a hotel guest. So that made sense, as logical. But the second piece was the part that I was fascinated by and what I really wanted to play up. And that was people like staying at Airbnb because it helps them feel like a local. And because often, you're in a neighborhood as opposed to downtown or in a financial district. So you get to know a neighborhood more, and you might get to know your host more, and your host can actually be somebody who gives you a sense of belonging. And so one of the things that I really focused on with the founders after I joined is, what business are we in? Are we in the business of home sharing, or are we in the business of helping people belong anywhere?
Well,
and that's ultimately where we went, is how do we move from being the home sharing company to becoming the belong anywhere company? And over the course of 2013, 2014, we sort of remade the way we packaged the company, and in fact, the way we operated, to become a company dedicated to helping people belong anywhere. And that was a very valuable thing to do, because it really helped us to expand our market, and helped us to say, maybe there are Gen Xers and there's baby boomers who are going to like this product too. The millennials like more space, less money. But as you got older, what people liked is the belong anywhere message. They like the idea of living like a local and getting to know your host. So I think, other lessons learned there. For me personally, I had to learn the lesson of, after being the CEO of my own company with 3,500 employees for 24 years, I was no longer the CEO. My job was to help Brian be the best CEO possible and help the founders be very successful. And that required me to right-size my ego, to be less focused on, how does Chip get his name in the paper or, in the media, and more focused on being the CEO whisperer and actually helping build Brian's skill set. I learned as much from Brian as he learned from me.
Of course.
And actually reported to him as well, which is interesting. Reported to a guy who was 21 years younger than me, who I was mentoring to be a great leader. That was an interesting thing. I would say beyond that, Airbnb's key lessons is, I'd say, focus. When you're a company that's growing globally and you're trying to change laws in municipalities around the world, you cannot go out in too many different directions and start too many businesses at once. And when I joined Airbnb, we had 30 strategic initiatives. Within 6 months, we got it down to 4. We
Wow.
said, these are the 4. And everybody in the company needed to know them, because frankly, previously, no one could recite all 30 strategic initiatives.
Of course.
So once we got to 4, everybody knew what the 4 were. They knew which teams they were on that were supporting which strategic initiatives. And we measured them, monthly. So long story short is, focus, making sure that people understood the key initiatives, measuring, and Airbnb is a data company, so that was easy. And helping to package the business in a way that meets a customer need that's a higher need. The higher need was helping people belong anywhere. Marriott couldn't say that. Expedia couldn't say that, but we could, because Airbnb is everywhere, because homes are everywhere, and we are all about belonging, and so it helped us create our strategic differentiator.
Huge. The focus really resonates, Chip, because that's one of the most difficult things for entrepreneurs to do. Typically, we're a little spazzy, right? We like to have our hands everywhere. And even within the company, you have too many initiatives. You're not going to focus on any, right? It's like core values. If you ever seen a company with 14 core values, good luck remembering any of them. You got to have 4 or 5, and that's it, so that everybody can live by them. So that's huge. So you help them basically just simplify and focus on the wildly important things.
Yes.
Versus being everywhere.
But listen, they were, here's the good news. They were smart. I wouldn't have joined them if I didn't find them smart, with great values and the great sense of mission and what they're doing. So I helped guide them, but man, were they, again, I learned as much from them as they did from me. And that's beautiful, because I think as of next year, the U.S. Department of Labor says that the majority of Americans will have a younger boss. We've never seen this before. So how do we create a workplace that has more intergenerational collaboration.
Huge.
And that is like, the companies that we're going to look at and admire in the next 10, 20 years are companies that have 5 generations in the workplace, and each of those generations has a voice and it's like a potluck. They bring to the table that which they do best. And I think that's a real opportunity. And that was one of the things I tried to install at Airbnb.
Chip, just to resonate what you said, I have that here at Higher Cloud, and it's incredible. I can't say this anymore, but I had a 19-year-old at one point, bunch of people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Let me tell you, if you think people in their 60s are tired and sickly, I laugh at you, because these people, I'm not even joking, will run circles around you. And they do. Some of them run 3 to 5 miles a day. I would never think to run 3-5 miles a day. You know what I mean? Like if I'm running from something, or I'm playing basketball, or I'm at the gym. I don't run, and so it is the most refreshing culture to be around. You got people teasing each other and people learning from each other. It's really, really, really nice. So we got to throw this ageist crap out the window. It's incredibly refreshing.
And there are people in their 60s who are sickly and et cetera.
Yes.
So the reality is, if you prejudge people purely based upon their age or their color of their skin or their gender or whatever, you're making a mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, just because not everybody fits that profile. And so, so I think, this is a key thing of the future is this intergenerational collaboration.
Huge, huge, huge. So speaking of age, I read your book, Learning to Love Midlife, loved it. That's actually why I pinged you, because I thought it was, I would never think I'd read a book about midlife, right? But I know you.
How old are you?
I'm only 42, so I don't really think about this.
You're in midlife.
Damn, that's scary. Don't say that.
You are in early midlife.
Midlife. All right.
Yes. Yeah. So the midlife is a life stage that has gotten a bad rap. It has, the first thing you think about when you think of midlife is crisis.
Midlife crisis. Yeah.
Exactly. And the reality is that midlife is the life stage between early adulthood, which may end at 35, and later adulthood, which may start at 75. So midlife lasts a long time, maybe from 35 to 75. And what I wanted to do was take what we've learned here with 5,000 people from 48 countries who've come down to Baja to our workshops and say, here's what I've learned. And here's the social science as well. So I wanted, the subtitle of the book is 12 Reasons Why Life Gets Better with Age. And what I really wanted people to understand is here, there's a lot of things that get worse with age, your short-term memory, your body typically, etc. But what gets better with age? Your emotional intelligence, your ability to edit and figure out what it is that's important to you. Your wisdom often grows with age. Your spiritual curiosity, your ability to be a good friend, your relational, your ability to know what's important to you and what matters in life. So your ability to tell your story, to understand your own story and the threads that have made and the themes that have made you who you are. So there's a lot of things to get better with age. And what I did was to take social science plus MEA, our alumni stories, as well as my own personal story, and weave it into this book that hit #1 on Amazon for happiness and self-help books.
Wow, congrats. That's incredible.
And I was on the Today Show and Good Morning America. So it's a trending topic, the idea of midlife. And I think, we have not had much in the way of positive messages about midlife. And that's really what I wanted to offer.
It's a very, very tricky time frame, right? Because you have kids that are no longer need you, but they need you, right? So you lose a little bit of that, because my wife and I, we live for our kids, right? Everything is surrounded by them. And so when they stop needing you every minute, or they don't want to play with you every minute, they don't want to hang out with you every minute. My brother used to tease me. He said, it only gets harder, man. Like right now, you just grab your kids, you throw them over your shoulder, you take them wherever you want to go. When they get older, they get opinions and stuff. I'm like, nah, not my kids, man. They're so chill. It literally is happening to me right now. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go here.
How old are they?
I have a 15-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And now they have opinions. They don't want to go. I'm like, how do you not want to go on spring break? Like, I'm not doing this for me, man. I'm doing it for you. But they have opinions. They want to hang out with their friends. It's important. So it's a rough time. Chip, tell us about 2 of the top 12 reasons, right? Because we can't go through all 12. I wish we could.
Yep. Well, let's talk about emotional intelligence. So IQ doesn't grow with age, but EQ does. And what does that mean, emotional intelligence? It means you understand yourself and your emotions. You can identify your emotions, and you're less reactive. You're able to moderate and regulate your emotions in such a way that it works for you and works for other people around you. So, when you're younger, you have a tendency to react more. And when you get older, you learn how to sort of see the triggers before you react. And of course, there are people out there who don't fit this profile.
Yeah.
These are averages I'm talking about. Your cranky uncle may not fit this profile. So emotional intelligence, learning how to dance with your emotions, learning how to identify them, and not be the victim of them is something we get better with age. Let me use another one. Time affluence gets better with age. So you're in the midst of it right now, my friend. You have 2 kids. You have a business that you're running. You've got a lot of obligations. The first half of our adult life, we are accumulating knowledge, accumulating responsibilities, titles, awards, kids, stuff. And then around midlife, usually in our 50s, we start to realize maybe we need to edit some of this because there's like too much.
Too many things.
And there's a point at which your kids are going to leave the home, and then you're an empty nester. You have a little bit more space available to you. Wow. What do you do with that? And then there's also the possibility that you have built a business, built a career, and you want to actually have more time for other things. Because in our 20s, 30s, and 40s, we let our friendships atrophy. We let our hobbies sort of go by the wayside. Yes, we may work out still because that's the thing that just keeps us sane. But there's all kinds of things we don't have time for. So time affluence is something that starts to actually become a thing in our 50s, 60s, and beyond. And when you have space for time, space for new things in your life because you have time, it allows you to become a beginner again. So at age 57, I asked the question, having moved here to Mexico, to Baja half-time, I said, 10 years from now, what will I regret if I don't learn it or do it now? And so at age 57, even though it didn't make any sense based upon like my mindset, I started learning Spanish because 10 years from now, I'll regret if I don't know Spanish. And I started to learn how to surf because at 67, 10 years from now, at that point, 6 years ago, I was like, well, surfing's gonna be harder at 67 than 57. I might as well learn now. So anticipated regret is a form of wisdom. Yeah. And so, but in order for you to have time, in order for you to try something new, you have to provide time for yourself. It's hard to be curious when you don't have time. It's hard to become a beginner again when you don't have time. So that's another one. So those are 2 of the 12.
The last one's huge. So anticipated regret. So you look in the future and say, I'm going to regret doing this. And that could be with bad habits too.
I'm going to regret not doing
it. Then both. Exactly.
Yeah. It could be, yeah. I mean, it could be either one.
That's incredible. Thank you for that. I mean, that alone was worth the podcast, I'm sure, for my audience, definitely for me. Let's talk about the midlife chrysalis, right?
Yeah.
In your TED Talk and in your latest book, you discussed this concept. Can you elaborate on what it means? And I mean, you already talked about it a little bit. And how can individuals navigate this transformative period?
Well, if you realize there's something called the U curve of happiness, and it shows what right now it's sort of a little bit shifting a little bit, partly because younger people are more unhappy than they've ever been. But historically, the U curve of happiness showed that people starting in their mid 20s get less happy, and they bottom out around 45 to 50. And your mileage may vary. 45 to 50 hit your bottom point. And then starting around age 50, you get happier with each decade after that. So, what I really want people to know is like, you may hit a rough spot in your 40s. The 40s are the hardest decade.
Why is that, Chip? Why is that? Because I always used to say I'm never afraid of being in my 40s. I'm definitely afraid of being in my 50s. It was a concept in my head. 40s is like, what? It's just, I'm a kid. I'm young, I'm healthy. 50 sounds old to me, right?
Yeah,
Or it did.
I hear you. Yet there was a time when your 40s sounded old.
Yes.
And so bottom line is, at 42, 50 will not seem old in about 5 years. But the reason 40s are the hardest decade is because of the fact that it's what my friend Brené Brown calls, you have the midlife unraveling. You have a lot of expectations about how your life's supposed to be. And when you get to your second half of your 40s, you realize some of those things are not going to happen. And you have to actually come to grips with the fact that you're going to be disappointed because some of those things are not going to happen. And you also sometimes get to a point where you just have no space for yourself. You're so busy. And you also get to a place where in your late 40s, you start to realize, okay, my body's not what it used to be. And so there's a lot of things happening in one's late 40s that lead to that. And so part of the reason that midlife is a chrysalis is because that I think it's that era when we're going through that difficult time that does feel a little dark and gooey and solitary. And we sometimes feel like, oh man, I'm the only one who's going through this. And in fact, no, you're not. And then you get to the other side and you hit your 50s and things get better and better and better. And your 60s are better than your 50s and your 70s are better than your 60s. So in terms of life satisfaction. And so long story short is, what if, your 20s, 30s are the caterpillar, your 40s are the chrysalis, and your 50s and beyond are the butterfly. And you're pollinating your wisdom in the world as the butterfly.
That's huge.
So that's why it's a chrysalis.
For the listeners who are going through their own midlife transitions, what practical steps would you recommend that they take in making sure their 40s and 50s and above is great?
If you go to the MEA website, which is meawisdom.com, at the bottom header, a bottom footer, you will see a bunch of free resources. And one of them is called The Anatomy of a Transition. That's a core piece of our program. Understanding that there are 3 stages to any transition. There's the ending of something, the messy middle, and the beginning of something new. And once you understand that, once you really grok that, you can understand what are the coping mechanisms for each of those. So for a lot of people in their 40s and 50s, they are in the process of ending something, but they don't know how to do so. It could be their marriage. It could be a company that they're going to sell. It could be, their parents passing away. It could be, the kids leaving the home. There's something ending, some identity, some way of being is ending, but we don't have a very good sense of what do you do there? So this the resource that's free on the website helps people to understand what do you do to end something in an effective manner. And then how do you go in this messy middle period? And then, which is the chrysalis period. And then how do you go to the butterfly period where you're learning something new? You're a beginner. That's, I think, a really important piece of this. Additionally, purpose. I think there's 4 paths to purpose. Number 1 is that excites you. Number 2, something that agitates you. Number 3, something that you're curious about or intrigued by. And then number 4, as was true with that litigation attorney, something from younger in your life, something that from earlier in your life that you loved and were passionate about, but you neglected. And so how do we use your purpose as like a flashlight for how to see your future? So that's really important. I think also getting clear. So that's transitions, that's purpose. And then wisdom. How do you get clear on what you've learned along the way? So I've done a practice since age 28 that any entrepreneur, any person could do, which is every weekend, I make a list of what I learned that week and how it would serve me in the future. Because our painful life lessons are often the raw material for our future wisdom. And so every week I sit down and I say, what did I learn this week? Professionally, personally, spiritually. And I say, what did I learn? It's usually like 4 or 6 things. What did I learn this week? And often the lessons are difficult, painful. And then how's it going to serve me in the future? So that's a way to accelerate your wisdom.
That's great. So it's all about enthusiasm and having a kind of a purpose, it sounds like.
It's about learning transitions, learning how to cultivate purpose, and then realizing you've built some wisdom along the way. But you may not even know it as wisdom because it's so obvious to you. But when I joined Airbnb, what I thought was obvious, those guys thought was wisdom.
It's huge. It's incredible what you can learn. My business partner is 65 years old. So imagine being in your 20s and having a partner that old.
Yeah.
Even though we were completely different, and I even had people comment like, I don't understand. This doesn't make sense. Why do you need him? It was like, no, it's not about need, man. Like there's a lot of wisdom that comes from someone that's lived, all those years and has learned so much, both in the business and in life. So I think it's huge. Speaking of, you talked about this a little bit, but what do you see the future of work looking like as so many people retire? And like you mentioned, a lot of people's bosses will be a lot younger than that moving forward.
Yeah. We're gonna work longer as a culture. I mean, retirement made sense and was something people looked forward to when they were a factory worker, because you don't want to do that for your whole life. But as we have more knowledge workers, people don't feel like their knowledge or their wisdom is done at age 62 or 65. So we're going to see people working in the workplace longer, which is good for the economy because it means that Social Security doesn't have such a burden of people just needing that as their primary source of income. I think we'll still have Social Security, but we'll also have a lot of people in the workplace into their 70s, a lot more entrepreneurs who are going to start a business in their 50s, 60s, or 70s.
Wow.
This is part of the reason why we created this entrepreneurship at any age workshop in Santa Fe with Inc. In September, is because we'll have 20-year-olds there, and we'll have people in their 20s, we'll have people in their 70s there probably. And so long story short is, I think the future of work is much more intergenerational, and you got to get used to the idea of having older people in the workplace longer.
That's huge. I think besides being good for the economy, I think it's good for the younger people who hopefully embrace these folks and learn from them, because there's so much to learn. One of my favorite things about older people is their calm energy and how they take care of things. The other day, so I own real estate, and I pulled up to one of the homes that I owned, and a woman had completely blocked the driveway of this home. It was school picked up time, and I was going through a really bad day, bad week, bad month, and I'm like really frustrated, angry, and I'm like, "What are you doing? You got to move," And finally, I get in my driveway, and my neighbor, who's 60-something years old, comes by, and he's like, "It's all good, man. It's all good." I'm like, "What do you mean it's all good?" She literally blocked my driveway. He goes, "It happens for 15 minutes a day. It's not a big deal." I'm like, "But I need to get in my driveway." He's like, "It's fine. It's fine, man. You're going to have a heart attack. It's all good. Don't worry." He goes, "I let them park in my driveway. I don't care." And I was like, okay. I was like, that's crazy the way you stay, because I was right in that moment. You don't block someone's driveway, but it didn't matter, right? I was the one stressed out and freaking out and angry for no reason. She was fine. She got in her car, kids or grandkids took their sweet time. She didn't care. I was the one having a damn heart attack about it. So these are the small things we can learn from folks that are balanced and older. They know more. They know, hey, this ain't worth it. It's nothing. This will come and go. So just small things like that even are great for me. What's kind of, when you look ahead, what are your aspirations for the Modern Elder Academy, and how do you envision its impact on society over the next few decades, if you keep doing it, obviously? Yeah,
if we can help people to see that aging is not a disease and it's not a curse, we're going to help people to live longer, healthier, happier lives. Becca Levy at Yale has shown that when people shift their mindset on aging from a negative to a positive, they gain 7.5 years of additional life. And so we're a pro-aging product and service. And our Santa Fe campus is huge, 2,600 acres, regenerative horse ranch, 2 retreat centers, dozens of hiking, mountain biking, and horseback riding trails. So I'm excited about that. We also have a second campus we'll have in Santa Fe as well, in town. So long story short is check out MEA. check out chipconley.com. And for those who have found this interesting, I have a daily blog. It's called Wisdom Well. You can find it either on chipconley.com or meawisdom.com. And, I offer all kinds of interesting insights around, and I'm sort of like a microdose of aging. A microdose of wisdom about, what I've learned along the way.
Well, besides teaching all these people a ton, you must be learning so much.
Very much so.
Right?
Yes.
And people ask me, like, why do you do this podcast? Like, what is it? Does it drive business for you? I'm like, I don't think so. I mean, I really did it just to have fun and learn, but this has become my PhD. I also took some courses at Stanford, did a program there, but for me, I'm learning more doing this podcast than I did from any university.
Yep.
And it's just incredible, right?
Yep.
As someone who continuously reinvents himself, like, what do you want your legacy to be?
I want my legacy to be the individuals that I've had an impact on. It's really very intimate. It's like, I don't have to have my name on a building, or what I really need is to feel like I've had a positive impact on thousands of people whose lives changed because, I helped them realize that their best years may be ahead of them.
And you did on this show at a level, and also that book is incredible, guys. Absolutely go check it out. What's next for you, Chip? Like, what should we look out for? I mean, I'm excited about the Santa Fe. Maybe I'll come out.
Yeah, you'll see me. I think it's really about Santa Fe. It's about Santa Fe. It's also about my two sons who are 12 and 9.
Nice.
And hanging out with them a little more often.
That's awesome. Well, Chip, I appreciate you greatly, man. You've been amazing. I've learned so much already from the book and today. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, brother.
And that brings us to the end of another great episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. I want to thank you for joining us and hope you took away some valuable insights to apply in your professional journey. Don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform so you don't miss out on the next great conversation. I promise it'll be good. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps others discover the podcast. Better leaders mean better working environments. Better working environments leads to happier people. Remember, a rising tide lifts all boats. I'm Avita Santoplian, and this has been the Tech Leaders Playbook. Keep leading, keep learning, keep giving, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay inspired, my friends.